Go ahead, please.
Yes, Boubacar Bari, Wakren. I will speak in French.
I'm not in favor of this policy. I'm telling it immediately, and I'm going to be very brief. For a major reason, I think that the higher education institutions have to follow the process in place. I think all instruments are in place so that higher education institutions can get the resources that they need. The essential thing is that African staff has to take into account maybe some specificities of these institutions by analyzing the different demands. Or I think the higher education institutions cannot claim to be the ones having knowledge if they are not capable of following a process that all other communities are following without problem.
Good afternoon, Madam from Registration Services. We have not refused to give any prefixes. We have not rejected any requests from education institutions to get IP addresses. In the case of a couple of examples that have been taken by Andrew, I'm pretty sure that these IPs have been allocated more than 12 months ago. We did not receive any additional IP address resources from these universities. I just was wondering what could have been the causes. I mean, if they have used the IP addresses, the actual policy actually allows them to come for additional assignments. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that last one. Then we'll get the response that we can continue if there's this time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will speak in French.
Good evening. My name is Gregoire Yomi. I come from Benin. I work for Benin Telecom. I don't agree with this policy. The question that I have here to convince me, do we need a policy for academies? Why can't we simply apply the policies that existed before for the academies? Also, if we want to push forward this policy, why don't we modify it into an IPv6? It would have been easier to say, well, everybody says that the academia medium is the best one to deploy IPv6. Maybe we can propose this policy in a V6 version.
Person that kept the time. Thank you. So I'm going to call on the authors to respond to some of the questions. However, before that, I would like to comment on Alan's question or comment. Yes, this document has not been updated after or during or before Afrinic 19, but it was updated after Afrinic 18. And according to the process, a proposal will only expire after 1 year. So if we don't, it depends on the outcome of this discussion. If we still don't get some consensus, either in favor or against, then it will mean that we will hope for an update or a review of the draft. Otherwise, it's going to naturally expire. That's the way, that's how it should be. So I hope that answers the question. Then the authors can respond to the other question.
Okay, a couple of comments. First of all, with institutions that already have space, being limited in how much space they get based on the ratio plus their old space, no problem with that. have absolutely no issue with adding that into the policy, that if you were to qualify for a /15 under this policy and you have a /16, you can only get a /16 more until your student numbers grow. In the same vein, if you had a /24 but you qualify for a /15 under this policy, then you get a /16 plus whatever you need to fill up the balance. I do not have a problem with that limitation whatsoever, and I think it does address the issue of someone who has potentially ending up with a lot more than somebody who's only just applying under this policy. With regards to the virtual universities, I have no problem putting a 1-to-1 ratio on the VPNs because they wouldn't need more than one IP per student on the VPN. I actually said to my co-author, and him and I would need to discuss this, but I actually don't really have a problem with excluding the virtual universities if that is the community wish to do so. Then with regards to the network plan, as Dr. Quaynor raised, universities should be keeping very good network documentation. I have no issue with that. And I have no problem with them submitting the documentation. I have a problem with it necessarily being used as justification for IP addresses, because on that plan, you can only represent a Wi-Fi AP as one device. There is no way to represent a Wi-Fi AP as 500 users on a plan like that. And as such, while I support them submitting a plan because I think it would be a good idea, I would argue that it cannot be used as justification, and I would also argue that Afrinic staff and hostmasters who are trained to allocate IP address space based on set qualification rules are also not network engineers. They are not there to analyze the network plans of an institution and diagnose what is going on that institution. And as such, I don't think the plans really assist them. Then lastly, Madhvi, you asked, why did the institution that applied for space and ran out not apply for more? I'm sitting in possession of an email, which I'd have to find, from the institution, where they said to me, we want to go back and apply for more space because we're out. But do we really want to face the chaos that we faced last time, or are we able to make do with what we've got? They opted to avoid it, and the other thing is, I might point out that when that application was originally made and the /15 was requested, they asked for a /15 and Afrinic charged them the full rate for the /15 and gave them a /16 and a /19 on the basis that they did not meet the concurrency justifications. The university in question then offered Afrinic a compromise and said, we do need this and we will be able to prove that we can use all of it. So give us the /16 and the /19 today. And if we come back within 60 days and say there is conclusive proof that every IP is allocated, you allocate us the rest of the /15 and we move to a /15 boundary, but you do not charge us again. Afrinic turned around and flatly refused that request. And as a result, for the institution to apply for more space to get to where they need to be is going to cost the institution another $6,000 or $7,000, which they could not, which quite frankly in a university capex budget is a lot of money. So if you want to know why the institution hasn't come back for more, it's because Afrinic did not give them their original request, would not grant the compromise that was offered, and instead chose to ask for an extra $6,000 or $7,000. That's why.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Sunday, would you like to say something?
What I'll just like to mention is, and flowing the discussions on the mailing list, what are the acceptable metrics? We are all here in this meeting, how many people have their tablets, their laptops, 2 phones. I carry 2 phones. How many IPs do individuals use? This is a very, very, very subjective thing. 2, 3, 4, 5, but definitely not 1. So this, there's no way you can show it on a network plan and agree on a metric that is universal unless that is fixed with the policy. So what we are proposing is the maximum that is acceptable. An institution can still decide to do 1-to-1, can decide to do 4-to-1, 5-to-1 as the maximum acceptable, or could even choose to do 0.2-to-1. That is the decision and choice of the university. But the policy gives the latitude for them to be that flexible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sunday. We've really consumed time that has been allocated for other discussion. I'm going to try to throw up some points to the community, and let's see whether we could make some progress. So from all this, so 2 things that is the bone of contention, it's the ratio, whether there should be ratio, and whether there should be hardware, there should be strict adherence to the hardware requirements or the topology, network topology requirement. So there have been different suggestions on how to modify this proposal, and there has been outright rejection of the proposal. So I'm gonna try to say something now. If this proposal have the following status, for those that are saying outright rejection, will you agree to accept that proposal if it has this following status? 1, if there is an agreeable ratio that should be used to assign resources to university. 2, if universities are actually requested to provide hardware, network topology information, but staff does not really use that as a major basis to approving the request. But staff rather use the justification of the numbers of users in respect to the ratio they are requesting for to allocate the resource. If we do it that way, if there's such an addition, if there's such editing, those who said no to the policy proposal, is it possible to have a change of mind? Those who said no, could you maybe one or two, could you quickly come to the mic and say if you say yes or no, and if no, please give the reason, and then we can, please, 10 seconds, please.
Mine is no.
Okay.
My reasons are, the question is, what problem are we trying to solve? I think the problem we are trying to solve is helping the institutions which currently don't have IP resources acquire them. If that's the problem we are trying to solve, then I think that's the best way, because even if I have a /24, what do you call it, campus, a campus that has only /24, I think I can show the utilization of that /24 in such a way that I could easily benefit from more IP resources. So this policy, as it stands, even with those modifications, still doesn't address the primary reason of lowering the entry barrier for new applicants to acquire IP resources, and therefore, then I still recommend we use the one-time pass, so that even if they do get it, the second time round should not be at the same level. So
okay, thank you. Okay, so that is one more thing I would like to add to it. If we also for the second round requesters, if we modify it and make sure that they don't fall under this policy, will it also make a difference? So please, Barry.
Oui, je parle en français.
I'll speak in French. For me, it's no. I'm not even talking about ratio. I don't think it's necessary. Universities have to follow normal procedures. Thank you. I'm also going to be very brief. I have made an objection. The chairman had talked about ratio. Nobody has spoken of ratio. Only the presentator spoke of ratio. All who have come here have said that the solution has been rejected. I don't know why we're still talking about ratio. We don't need to discuss about ratio because we don't want this solution.
Note, people have made different comments, and we're just trying to get a valuable discussion out of this. So we can't say everybody that came to the mic has actually been one-sided about this whole thing. Please go ahead, Alain.
Yes, Chair, excuse me to go back maybe to my last comment. This policy proposal has been on the table for a while. And I remember in Abidjan, we saw the same slides. So my point is, what is exactly new? What do you want us to comment on? Because it looks like we are still going back to do something we have done some years ago. So what exactly new in this proposal?
What is new in the proposal is as surprising as the fact that after there was no objection in this hall, objections suddenly sprang up to the issues that had been discussed in this hall. But again, we are back because we can be back. It allows us to be back.
And can I just comment about the reasons for this policy, because there have been comments that the policy doesn't address the primary motivation. Let me be clear. Yes, we want universities to be able to get the space, but there is another motivation, and Sunday and I have always been very, very open about this. We sit at the moment with an unused pool of IP addresses. There is clear evidence that there are IP addresses in huge quantities that are sitting there, not necessarily being used on this continent. There is mails that are deal sent to the list claiming that certain applications were fraudulent, but the space had been allocated. The space is running off the continent. Do we then let the space run off the continent where there is no recourse? Yes, we can talk about we're going to reclaim the space. Reclaiming IP address space is more difficult than you would ever imagine, because once it's in the BGP tables, good luck reclaiming it. Or do we give the space to those people who can be responsible custodians of it, who can use it adequately, and who can enhance the intellectual property on this continent that is so key to this growth of this continent? If we look at our academic institutions on this continent, they have been responsible for things as far as the heart transplant came out of an African institution. One of the African institutions holds large numbers of patents on the MRI. These are things that generate economic input into the continent, the square kilometer array as well. Without the IP space to enhance the institutions and let them communicate directly without the barriers imposed by NAT, this will not happen. So primary motivation, yes, let's use the space before it's stolen. Secondary motivation, let's give the academic institutions the ability to continue doing the research and generating the intellectual capital which continues to drive this continent today.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, Prof.
Yeah, we want to help the university, so I don't think that is the issue. I think what I'm hearing those more familiar with the process say is that the new thing you describe as having occurred means that the policy should be taken off the table. Meaning that on the list, it had problems going forward. If it hasn't changed, then it should not be here. If the document has changed and you could show us what the difference is, then we could discuss it further. But if there's absolutely no change, same document that was rejected on the list and you've come here, then it should be taken off the table. That's what you are being told.
Okay, Prof. Yes. Actually, I'd like to clarify something. That policy on the list during the last call was not rejected. We just observed that there was no consensus. That was what we observed. And by PDP, which is the process developed by the community, we understand that we have a 1-year span for a proposal, and that is what we are acting on. Alan, I'm sure you still you still have a comment, but however, please hold on, Alan. I would like to take Paulo's comments and Badru's, then we can try and see whether we can bring this to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the point that I'm trying to make is the same. The issue is that the policy did not reach consensus, right? So I'm not saying it was rejected, but we would like to see what has changed. What is it that has changed to gain consensus this time around? Because it's the same document that is being presented to us. So is there a change log? Has this policy been updated? Why are we discussing the same thing over and over again?
Okay, thank you.
I had some issues on the mailing list. I posted them. I'm going to post the same things when this comes to last score again. So,
okay,
so why are we going round and round?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ask the author to respond to this question that I'm going to ask now.
Excuse me, I have a comment on the process, and I think comment on the process must go first.
Okay.
And I want us to be careful. Mr. Co-Chair, you said we had consensus face-to-face, and during the last call, there was no consensus, then you have to go back. This is not the thing, because you have a consensus. When you go to the last call, the last call is not to go and confirm this. People should bring substantial matter, okay, to deny the face-to-face consensus. Otherwise, the policy should go. So if the policy is back on the mailing list, it means people oppose the thing. Otherwise, the last call shouldn't go against unless there is something substantial. So if you are saying that there was no consensus on the last call, for me, is consensus that we should oppose.
Thank you, Glenn. I will ask the authors a question now, and I would like them to respond very brief. I will repeat it very briefly. Have you, after AFRINIC 18, have you received comments suggesting that some part of the proposals be edited, yes or no? And if you have, why have they not been incorporated into the document?
Okay, if I can comment on that. After AFRINIC 18, which was before the 26th of July 2013, there were comments received. The document was edited. Further to that, since AFRINIC 19, as we have said, the policy allows us to retable this policy to the floor. Why do we do that? Because the floor has come with comments and with suggestions again that were not heard at AFRINIC 19. And if I look, for example, we said in this meeting now that we would put a limitation on the amount of space that somebody gets if they already have space to bring them up to the level. That is a new modification. The issue of virtual ISPs and the VPNs, we have agreed as authors that we are happy to go with a one-to-one. We have said we'd even be okay with discussing an exclusion for virtual ISPs. So to turn around and say that because the policy did not pass consensus of a small minority of people when the majority chose not to comment, and to say therefore that we cannot come back to this community asking the floor what changes they would like us to make so that we can get consensus, I find to be out of line with the process and slightly disingenuous.
Thank you, Andrew. Sunday, would you like to add anything? Okay. Okay. At this point, I'm gonna ask the floor by show of hand those who think this proposal is not going to be useful in any way and is not. Hello? Alain, you have a comment, sir? Would you?
This morning, I asked a question, how do you determine consensus? Because I knew that we were going to get to that point, and this is where we are.
Okay.
So I think the discussion in the room, okay, show clearly the way forward. So trying to show people to raise hand, I don't think is going to help. So the discussion show clearly what we want, what the community want.
Okay, Alan, okay, please, let's take this. I believe all of us who are here, we are all interested in getting some progress, right? We are interested in making progress on this particular issue. And the role of a co-chair also is to be sure to weigh the two sides and observe whether there's going to be a receivable or actionable or achievable result. So please, what I want to do now is just to see, because the reason why we are actually, like Barry was saying, there's no even need for ratio. He doesn't want ratio. He wants people to follow the rules and so on and so forth. So, however, if the main policy proposal, I mean, the one that is currently existing is reduced to maybe justification of 25%. So, right now it's 50%. What if it's 25%? So, there are options. However, for this particular policy, we need to make some progress. Some new comments has been made, and we need to know if those comments are integrated, whether it can look good at all. So at this point, there has been varying discussion of varying points, and it's important to observe the consensus by show of hand. That is what I would say maybe would resolve to. However, and this is it, the community doesn't make all these comments on the list, and we wait until we get to the face-to-face to argue this, and it becomes more challenging to determine all these things. So, but this is a very, very critical discussion. I've also noted that some of the people who are actually against this policy are people who are said to be using the academic, they are the academic institution. So on that basis, we may actually also say that gives some weight to being opposed. However, at this junction, I suggest we just take this thing. Yeah, you want to say something? Yes, please go ahead.
Can I just suggest something?
Yeah.
I appreciate the passion of the authors, and also there have been some good comments on the floor. It's not the end of the world. Let's take time. Let's go back and relook at it, put in some of the comments, and then represent the policy in a format that we get a good level of consensus. I'm thinking compromise is not really a way to win, so let's really take time and redo it. That's the suggestion I'd like to say, instead of trying to vote on it right now.
Okay, thank you for the good suggestion. So, based on what Badru is just saying, does the community agree that we take this back to the mailing list for discussion? Do we agree we take this back to the mailing list for discussion?
Yes.
Can I get a show of hands for that, please? Okay. Okay. That we don't take it back to the discussion list and it ends here. Can I get a show of hands, please? Pardon? Pardon? No, maybe the interaction, maybe the interpretation is not going on fine. Is there anything that I missed? I've just asked whether we...
No. Mr. Chairman, Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chairman, there's a problem with the procedure. In the case, in cases of vote, there are universal rules. When we ask a question, who are the people who agree? Then we say, who are those against? And then how about those who abstain? We cannot just conclude there is a problem.
Alan, you want to say something? Okay. I think we need to, Alan, please, do you want to say something, please?
I think this gentleman has been in the queue for a long time. I would suggest that you give him a chance.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Alan. My question, I just have one simple question for Sunday and Andrew. And mine is, if somebody came to my house and said he wanted to refurbish my bedroom, at least I would expect at the very least that he would ask me what is it that I want. So, I mean, I was wondering to what extent, there's an Afrin community, and to what extent have you sought the input of the three regions of Wakren, Ubuntu, and Afrin in this document? Because I see most of the title of the proposal purely is for academic institutions, and I just want to know whether, if you've sought their views and what their views are on this, so that we could help shorten the process of developing this. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that comment. Just to note that those our friends, all the institutions also should have, they should make comments. They should contribute themselves. Not that we should pursue them and go and ask them for comments. That's the only way we can get results. So, Alan, could you quickly make your contribution?
Yes, hi, it's Alan Barrett again. I have a comment about procedure. We don't vote here. We're here to discuss, and there's been a lot of discussion. Then at the end of the discussion, I think the task of the co-chairs is simply to determine whether or not there is consensus in this room. And as Ale Aina said several minutes ago, I think the answer to that question is very clear. There's no need for a show of hands. You can decide for yourself whether or not there is consensus in this room.
Thank you, Alan. The last person, please. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to make one last point. Andrew said about innovation coming from African universities over the course of history. The internet is probably innovation that came out of American universities, and there's an awful lot of IP address spaces in that community in American universities, whereas a lot of African universities have none at all. I think the longer we delay this in this proposal, the more chance there is that there'll be nothing left, that we run out. So leaving it too long means it'll be pointless anyway.
Thank you. Sunday wants to make a final comment, then I will then determine what is next. Thank you.
I'd just like to make this comment once and probably for the last time. If anybody is expecting me to come and beg that this is for you, please take it, I think that is a mistake. This policy is being discussed. The intention is very, very clear. Twofold. IP is going out of the continent. We want to put it in the universities so that the future can benefit from it. That the current custodians may not see it as important, just like my grandfather did not believe the internet was important because it would not give him food 10 years ago. It's not a reason for me to back off, because I believe in it. But for those who object, it would be nice to know why, other than the fact that we did not reach out politically. I am not going to try to motivate support for this policy. Let it pass on merit, or let it fail because it will not be useful to the community. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew.
I just want to respond very briefly to the question of whether or not people were approached. The answer to that is yes. I sat at UbuntuNet Alliance meetings where I discussed this with multiple NRENs. I sat in Zambia at the AFREN meeting, and I discussed this with multiple people. I had discussed this with NRENs from all over the region and with universities. I've discussed this with universities in Kenya. I've discussed this with universities in South Africa. I talked to universities in Namibia. I spoke to universities all over the place. So your answer is yes. And the comments that have come back from the floor, all of them, without exception, came from one of the three majors. They were all WACREN based. Maybe WACREN institutions feel they don't need that. That doesn't mean we should not take into account the other two major ones, and the comments have not come from them.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. All the comments that has been made, I'm sure Ernest and the secretary has been taking note of those comments. However, so at this point, there has been different proposals on what next to do, on some suggestion on edit, and so on and so forth. I will advise the authors to take note of those comments and present a better draft. So on this stand, I will say I have not observed a consensus in favor or against this proposal. And on that basis, we'll send it back to the mailing list for discussion. I encourage everyone who is in this room to exercise the same energy and the same strength that they have done in here on the mailing list, so that we can have some good draft, or a draft that can be well discussed at the next meeting. Thank you. Professor Nee?
Please, I just want to encourage us to try and work together than to try and divide us. I came up here only because I heard a comment that all the spokespersons not in favor were from a particular REN, regional REN. I think we should strike that out of your minutes, or it's not a constructive thing. I want us to unite and support all of HEI together, not begin to say one regional REN, one this. Now, it's not, I don't see those kind of things. So that's really the only reason why.
Thank you very much for the word of wisdom. I think that is very important. Andrew, perhaps you should see Professor Nee if you need to discuss some things with him.
Professor Nee,
at this point, Andrew, I think we have overstretched this. At this point, I think we need to.
Professor Nee, I am more than happy to strike that comment. The comment was simply aimed at reflection that the academic institutions across the continent were actually consulted, and this was discussed with. And if any offense is taken from my comment with regards to WACREN, I apologize, and I am quite happy to have that comment stricken from the record.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. It's been a very, very trying one. We've just discussed one policy for the whole session. We have 3 more agendas, 3 more items on this particular agenda, which we'll try as much as possible to carry on to the next session and try to be as brief as possible on it. So, break? Is it time for break? I think we'll have a 15 minutes break right now, and we'll come back and then we can continue from where we stopped. Thank you.